Today is July 20th, 2012. We're doing an oral history interview for the archives at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. I'm Charles Lundquist. Our guest today is Herschel Belew, but he likes to be called Bud and goes by the name Bud. We usually start out these interviews by letting the interviewee tell us a little bit about his career and how he got to Huntsville and into the space activities here. So, can you do that, please?
Be glad to. I grew up in rural West Tennessee in Carroll County, which is just east of Madison County, where a nice little city of Jackson is. Most people know where it is. Anyway, went to a high school, city high school. There were only 23 of us in the class. Started in 40 and got out in 44 during the real heat of the big war. And after I got out of school, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I was drafted and wasn't taken in about late 44 because I had poor vision. But earlier on, when they were trying to build up the masses of bodies, they would have taken me. They said they were getting particular. Well, I went to UT Knoxville, got a bachelor's of science degree in mechanical engineering, and then for about a year after that, it was really hard time. I don't know if anybody was aware of about that time. Engineers were a dime a dozen. And I would since I lived in Tennessee, I would go to Memphis, look around. I'd meet people from Purdue and all kind of people down looking for a job. But that's neither here nor there. Finally got a job, and things were going pretty good for me. With sales engineer, and I wasn't that excited about it being that. I wanted to be doing some sort of design or making things. And so I was number one on the list of draftees in the fall of 1950, for Carroll County, Tennessee. And working in Little Rock, Arkansas, I went for my exam. And the doctor came in and said, "Well, you're in." I said, "How come they would take me now? I don't want to go. But I know I'm in. I'm through college and trying to, get life started." Son said, "They're looking for warm bodies." It was when the Koreans was coming out and the Chinese were coming in, and they were taking warm bodies. Well, anyway, I'm pretty talkative, so you may have to head me up.
Oh, go right ahead there.
So,
good stuff.
We went to Fort Jackson, and I enjoyed camping and backpacking. So all the basic training and shooting was, a fun thing, but I didn't know where. I figured I was going to career. When we were on the rifle range, we had from the hospital in Fort Jackson wounded veterans. Some of them lost their arm, and they went down there. And when we qualified on the range with the M1 rifle, they'd take us down and say, "Forget that bullseye." Said, when they come at you, you either kill them or they're going to kill you. Blowing bugles, playing martial music, screaming, and said, "You better be able to shoot fast." And so I shot 120 rounds. My ears still ring from it. Shooting cedar bushes, not real targets. And so I went into a casual company, which means you're in the Army, but you're not doing anything, garbage detail and stuff like that. And occasionally they'd call in a roll call, and they'd call several guys out. I knew a lot of them in my company, and basic training. Everybody had some sort of engineering degree or math or physics, except the acting sergeants, and they were all reservists who had never been in the Army, but they were in the Army Reserve Unit, and they had to take basic training with us. One guy had a Silver Star, and one other honor. He had been in the Navy, and all through World War II, and he joined the Reserve or National Guard in the Army just for the money, Well, anyway, we got out one morning after roll call, or during roll call. They called my name and about three others. And we real quick found out we were going to Aberdeen Proving Ground. And I know you know what to do. They got the the transport vehicle division, the combat vehicle division, and they've got the ballistics division. And so I had my pick I said, I want to be, with the testing the tanks. And so we did tests there. The tests were already written up. You just adjusted to the newest vehicle. They'd send the first one made of any new vehicle there. And then we ran tests in the wintertime. Devils Lake, North Dakota, using a National Guard summer camp, North Dakota National Guard, which they obviously wasn't using in summertime. And there was a Sioux Indian reservation there, and we had our rules and they had theirs, and had a little conflict at times. They could use all the wood as down and dead and down. Trees aren't thick up there, you know.
Yeah.
And they were always wanting us to knock a few trees down for them, which we did with the tank, you know.
Oh, good.
Anyway,
generous of you.
And then the next summer we went to Yuma, Arizona for summer test out there had the American Petroleum Institute there with representatives from Ethel and all these big corporations, and they were worried about the vapor pressure required another chemical. The higher the octane or the higher the vapor pressure, you have to do it in a refinery and you lose a lot of volume. And so they were running tests on tanks. And the same thing, we had civilian drivers. We were writing reports every week, running around on the weekends. And when I got discharged in the fall of '52, and they were offering me a job, and I almost took it, but we have to go to Kwajalein for the atomic bomb thing. And I was kind of spooked by that radiation stuff. Plus, I had a girlfriend at home, which never worked out, but I had two strong reasons not to go. So I went to work for the TVA in Knoxville in what I call a make-do job. It was mechanical design, but it was piping system for steam power plants. Of course, they hadn't got into the nuclear yet. They were just making studies on it. And then I decided, I heard people talking about Redstone Arsenal, Huntsville, Alabama. They're hiring anything walks in the door down there that's got a degree. So I came down here and I was interviewed by Oscar Holder, one of the original Germans. In fact, at the Space Museum, if you go there now and look at the picture on the wall with all the original German group, von Braun and all the ones you've heard of, Oscar Holder, Holder, and another guy are the only two people still alive. And as I was talking to you, he's getting into dimension a little bit because we have what we call the Windtunnel boys get together once a month. And he used to come regularly. And last time I was there and he was there, I was talking about a test we ran one time, and he said, "Did we do that?" This is hard. He's
getting on in years.
Yeah, he's in his early 90s. And so I stayed on at the wind tunnel there, and initially all it has a little 7-inch blowdown tunnel, which they later sent to Auburn. And I was there through the building of the 14-inch wind tunnel and the 12-foot diameter base flow facility, they call it. And I did essentially Oscar with Oscar's tutors, the design and the stress analysis of all that stuff.
Tell us a little bit about Oscar while we're at this.
Okay.
What kind of a fellow was he?
He was in his schooling. Most of the guys, like I don't know if von Braun was a sword fighter, but there were a lot of them you could see they had been chopped across the face. Heidelberg, and they fought with sabers, serious. I guess you had to draw blood and then it was over. He said that never did appeal to him, and he didn't have the family or whatever it is to get in those places. So he said, I'm like a UT co-op or Alabama co-op or Georgia Tech co-op. And he said, I worked in the ball bearing factories I was there, during my education at Swineford. And then he said, I went to Penamundi, where the rocket stuff.
Yeah.
And he can make a tough stress problem. It's real simple. He'd make a simple but conservative assumption. You know, if this will hold it, we know we don't have to. And so that's the way we designed it and everything then. There was no finite element analysis or any of that other stuff. And so I looked on him with a lot of great respect because he could really think on the feet, and he would see in his mind 1, 2, 3, and would do that, you know, and how we would do it. The windows on the 14-inch wind tunnel he designed were like the tumblers on which by the way they're still running out there at the wind tunnel, building 4732. The door closes, and they had all these 1 or 1.5 inch pins, and all these holes retracted, and then all the way around, and it was an old racetrack shape, an oval, and he had sliding hydraulic. When the hydraulic hit the hydraulics to push the door to, it tripped some or put action in the sliding plates. It had slots. These slots would go, if there's a pin, they had another pin, and then where they had slots, and it would, as you slid, you'd raise all the pins out of their locking position in one motion, you know. I would have worked half my life, never figured out. I don't know where he came up with. But he had a very keen mind. I had nothing but respect for him.
Well, that's interesting. Well, the highlight of your work with the wind tunnels was a supersonic wind tunnel. And can you tell us about it?
Well, now,
or a
my wife got mad.
Hypersonic, baby.
My wife got mad when she came to me. I said, "You're going to make Ron Brown look like a thief or no?" I said, "I make him look like what he was, an aggressive leader."
Okay, that's good.
And so they had a get together. I wasn't in that. I wasn't high enough up. I'd have had to have been a branch chief or something like that. But I got first. He said, "You know, that's back when we were trying to beat at Houston out of the shuttle program," and he felt that if we could come up with a hypersonic shock tunnel, wind tunnel, that would measure the reentry speeds and forces, it would be a big plus. But we had to do it in like 3 months, something like that.
This was Von Braun.
Yeah, Von Braun. I went at the meeting, but I heard a recording and somebody made a note. And he said, "This is illegal. We're supposed to get it approved by Congress by the amount of money we put. But each of these lab directors, Dr. Geisler and all these, they had discretionary funds. And they'd pass it on down to their whoever and ask them to do something, which wasn't in the main program, was to advance the state of art or something." Right. So
that was the way lots of things got done.
Started out, and so I thought, well, that's great. And I had myself, and by then I started working in '55, so that was '64, I guess. So I had enough experience that I wasn't backing off from it, and I would talk to him occasionally. And so we got started, and they were talking 30,000 psi. And I knew you couldn't buy an O-ring in all the United States and Russia too that would hold that. That pressure just squirts out like butter, as you've already said. You knew that. Well, anyway, we started out, and I was on the phone half the time calling other facilities that had ever done some of these things. Found out early on it's pretty stupid to reinvent the wheel. You know, if somebody's got something to go, let's go with it.
Sure.
And so I always pride myself on having a neat stress report. On the 14-inch tunnel, I've still got 114 pages of hand sketches, free diagram, but I did that in quote spare time just to have it for record, you know. But when you're laying out or supervising somebody lay out a flange, it's, you know, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet diameter, 6 inches thick, and you're going to have to mill surfaces on it. You've got to spend a lot of time looking at it and talking about it. And so I spent my stress. Didn't bring it out. I never did make a form. I just had manila folders with one of these magic marker things on it, like clamping force on a driver tube, and there'd be all kinds of, even something I did at lunch or something, all in there, but I had it in order. So, by the way, Oscar by then was he'd been moved up to deputy something. I guess he was deputy division chief there, which he didn't like. He liked to be doing what he did best. Well, everybody, I think, feel more comfortable that way. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, we got the drawings on, and meanwhile, in the double diaphragm, I don't think I can get into explaining how we couldn't find a valve that would handle that pressure. And for the little valves there was a company named Super Pressure. And for a valve, just a little cut-off valve from switching to the storage tank, they would make it out of a solid block of steel, just a cube or a rectangular shape, and machine it out. And they didn't work. They just put so much mass there, they knew it wasn't going to blow out. Mm-hmm. We couldn't hardly do that. But anyway, I stole that in steel. I used a company called Fashion. Beats my mind now. I can't. All right. It's in the petroleum industry. They have flanges that are tapered on the back, and they have a half circle of steel, and a half circle of steel, and these tapered surfaces slide up over the flanges, and you just need 2 big screws on the outer edge, just because there's hardly any separating force. But they weren't interested in doing it in time, so I designed those, and they worked fine. And we got it going, and I thought that what a wonderful thing. I'd never done anything like that. Right from just now, here it is, and we got to do it, and we got to do it in a hurry, and here's why we have to do it.
And what were what Mach number or what other things could it reach?
Well, let's see, 16, I think. This is a report here, the first report made on it at the 21st semi-annual meeting of the Supersonic Tunnel Association, and made it Princeton University in April of '64. And that's 15,000 PSI. Anyway.
But Mach 16 was about it.
Yeah, and we ran and got tests. They had some sort of transducers by then that they could respond quickly. You didn't have any flow time. Mm-hmm. Very municipal. And it was, boy, we were feeling good. Everything's going, we did it. Come in there. Well, meanwhile, Congress says Houston's going to get the job. Well, Houston has got word, I think, that what we were doing. And they were going to get our coattail in the buzzsaw, I guess, or something. Anyway, Dr. Von Braun came in and said, in 2 weeks, I don't want anything where this building is but a sodded field. And it is right now. If you go east of what's this security building?
I've forgotten the number, but
4311 or something.
Something like that, yeah.
4300. I can't remember. And what we had storage tanks out there, and pits, concrete pits. So if it blew up, it'd blow up like this, And we had pressures, some of them several hundred and maybe 1,000 psi. The mix, I forget what it was, helium or nitrogen. It's a mix of gases for that pressure, for the handling properties. And they put 200 psi, left 200 psi in each of these tanks sitting in there. And they sandblasted them a little, because we thought sooner or later somebody would want to use those tanks, And then they got somebody in the Army, maintenance, something, to spray cosmoline, you know, the gunk you put on gun.
Yeah.
And so they covered them with cosmoline, and just running off. And then they came in there with a bulldozer, put gravel over, and then they put sod over, dirt over.
Buried them.
Buried them. I can show you right now. Go out there and say, dig here.
And they're buried there.
They're buried right now. And, well, then they put everything on the, I don't know what it is, like a government hotline of surplus items or something like this. And the people at the AEDC, which is Tullahoma, Tennessee, had a need for the main working parts where the double diaphragm was. And they came down and got them, and I had no idea what they were going to do with it. But I knew a guy up there, he had about the same job I did. We both left TVA at the same time, and strangely, he got in Windtunnel design work at AEDC, and I got in the same thing here. And I said, Newt, name of Newt Daniels, he's passed on now. I said, what on earth are they doing that? He said, I'm not supposed to talk about that. And he says, get me, you know, he was sort of tongue in cheek. I said, cut that stuff, tell me. He says, we're shooting chickens into airplane windshields out down here in a pine thicket, and says you can't hardly find it unless you got a guide. You go, said the Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, and said we're told them they were already dead and frozen. Well, now you know you're not going to get any good data shooting a frozen chicken into a fighter plane windshield. So he did it with a wink, you know. I said that's got them. And last I heard, they were still using that, but they took. I don't know who they is, off of a surplus list of items. I reckon centers do that every now and then.
Oh, surely.
I'd bought about 6 sheets of 4x8. I can't remember where the diaphragm, the stock thickness was 5/8 to 3/8 thick. And it was in an eel, very soft. We made the diaphragms out of it because they wanted to have a, you know, we need to have at least 6 months supply of diaphragms. Well, how many are you going to use? Well, you know, they told me about how many square feet they needed. They being, there's 3 or 4 people in the requirements that talked to us. So, I felt better about that. I've never done anything on flight hardware. That's why I like working down there. But what has happened later on, things that we'd done with nobody bothering us, because I had a connection at the metallurgical lab, Cataldo, I forget the guy, what his name, about to go and talk to them about materials we use. But after the tragedy with the shuttle, you know, when the first astronauts
the O-ring problem.
We couldn't. I told somebody we couldn't put a commode in the toilet without somebody had to prove operational readiness. We were non-flight. We'd never had to go through operational readiness, safety, metallurgy, the dynamics people. We'd all sit in a little room down there. And this friend of mine, John Heyman, we'd about to go to sleep. Well, we'd done that since 1955. And we'd never heard anybody had anything to blow up, but it don't mean it wouldn't happen. Auburn had a contract, and they had 3 guys come up working on their doctor's degree, and I guess physics or some engineering. And they were wanting to put in the 14-inch wind tunnel, which we'd done before, simulate another thing with flow within the wind tunnel with it. And so they had a model design of the grain of a grain of a solid rocket where it burns. And they wanted to get the flow how that went. And so I immediately doing I just took a segment out of one of these where a screw. They had plates of stainless steel. I mean, what's it, acrylic, plexiglass. You know, where the flows, the star they called it. It was within a wind tunnel, and they had a flow in there through that. And I said, that won't work, you know. I just interrupted. I was over here. And I'd calculated that these sheets of plexiglass, the pressure they'd given us, and they had a spacer between them, and that defined the grain. I said, it'll crack the plexiglass right in the line between the bolts. No, we got, and they gave me these, first ones I'd ever seen, these printouts, and all the colors indicating stress, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I don't care. I said, you got to put end conditions in there realistic. They hadn't even considered. And the second time they blew, well, that thing came apart.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to see it in the way when technicians came up and said, "It's just what you said it did." And
I told you so.
Yeah, but then, you know, young guy working on his doctorate degree, he's not had the experience mainly of how things will fail, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they had these plates like these of plexiglass and a spacer between them here, and the air was flowing through this way, and had bolts in here. And I knew when they got the load on this, that the bolts would hold, yeah, but the lip of the place was going to shear from or fail on tension, I guess. But it was a good job. I went to Aberdeen Proving Ground, and having been up there while I was in the Army, it was, you know, sort of like old homes. And they were firing reentry models of Pershing and Redstone and Pershing, and there was another one had a warhead like a top, kid's top you spin. I can't think what it was.
There were several missiles.
Yeah, and they would shoot them downstream. They would, you know, on a sabot, is that correct?
Yeah.
Correct?
Sabot,
French word.
yeah.
And turn it loose, and with movie cameras and all, they could get the damping derivatives, the characteristics. Mm-hmm. But the greatest one was ever done. We did that back. I forget what the first Redstone or what. It looked like a top. We were talking about, boy, we know we can't do that. So we decided we'd get a weather balloon, and I had a guy one of my draftsmen made balsa wood models all the time. Now let's make a balsa wood model of that and have little weights where we can adjust them for CG and all that, all this stuff. And so then we were going to hang it off this weather balloon. In the Army, and we had somebody here who was in the weather service, and they said, we'll get you one of those. We told them what we were going to do. And we had to wait for a still day, and they set up cameras over there at 45-degree angles. And I designed a little trigger had a string down there. Had to get a little quick jerk. And so we dropped that thing, and it came out and did like this.
Yeah.
And they got their damping derivatives. I hope that's the right word.
Yeah.
From that simple thing. And then later we did that. John Heyman, who I was telling about, said he knew. I was too busy with one of Mr. Dom's hot projects. He always had some way off thing that just advance the state of the art. Matched index and refraction. It was supposed to block out where you couldn't see. The model wouldn't block the shock waves and the movies did take. And anyway, John Heyman, they had some plexiglass, went over and what they had in supply, built with aluminum angle iron and filled it up about 8 foot of water, is about 2 foot square, and they designed a little model to go in the water and where you could drop it, and as it went down, it would, you know. They made a mistake. They just eyeballed that thing, broke. All of them came in there, you know, completely wet.
Well, you had some interesting experiences with
and I visited while I was in there. I went to Langley. Seen that about every 6 months. They had a group up there just working on string gauge balances and dynamic balances, which they had more than we had in our whole branch of all the people together.
Yeah. And
so we recognized experts from this, and we had a good working, and we ran a lot of models up there, you know, up there built for that. The best model, the most exciting one I ever got was I forget what the scale was, or the entire shuttle launch assembly, and it was out at the Space and Rocket Assembly. That's about 6 to 8 feet.
You build a model for a wind tunnel of the shuttle.
Yeah. Oh yeah, lots of them.
Lots of them.
Oh yeah, we had pressure. We had all the pressure, different angles there, and had it on the big wind tunnel balance where you could measure the forces and moments on the entire assembly. And then on the little nozzles on the back, I designed thin covers and attached it to the place where it was heavy enough to support it. And when they flow impinged on it at different angles, we could measure the forces. It wasn't exact because, we had too much stuff in there, I guess. But it's better than somebody guessing at it.
Mm-hmm.
And sure. so we somebody always had an idea. This is what we need.
Okay, well, that was quite a career.
Well,
when did you retire, or what eventually happened?
Well, let's see. I retired. When was that? I think I had 35 years counting the Army. When they were part of Redstone, and it got. We were, as my father would say, like illegitimate. We being the people. The whole lab is theory. All of them are PhDs, and we were like my dad would say, orphan children at a picnic. Mm-hmm. Nobody claimed us, and every time there's a rift, I had up to 18 people at one time, and I had them all loaded up working. And they would get some old draftsmen or the technicians out of the tunnel. Well, I can understand why they did it. You could rehire those, but you had some pretty good junior engineers and other things. Anyway, it was discouraging to get everything going, and then the workload would drop off. So it was
So when did you retire then?
I worked for a company out of Newport News for Virginia, and
that was after you retired.
Yeah, after I retired.
What year roughly did you retire from Marshall?
I'd say about 85.
85, all right.
Something like that, yeah. It got
after the shuttle had flown a few times.
Oh yeah, and I guess I was aggravated at I never got to see a single shuttle launch. I saw one Redstone launch, and it went up about 50 feet and took off. I don't know if you ever heard the one that flew into the hangar. Redstone.
Yeah.
I was down there with Bob Newber, who was working in our lab, and I'd never seen a launch, and all of a sudden it's going, and I see a brilliant white light. I said, "What on earth?" He said, "That thing has fell over, and we're looking right up the engine." Mm-hmm. It was at night, sitting in them ballpark seats out there. And
well, after you retired from Marshall, what did you do?
Did the same kind of work. For out there for NASA. I sat in my old desk a while out there. A lot of people
working for a contractor.
Working for a contractor.
All right.
I thought I needed to double dip some.
Sure.
And it was kind of a hard thing to do, because I don't care if you have been there for years. Your working relationships is a little petty stuff.
Yeah.
But I've enjoyed it. It's been a pretty good ride, and I got a patent with this guy here. I could have got 10 or 12 patents, so it won't take the time, because I'd done some things that a lot of Oscar Holder helped me do some valve design. That really it was his idea, but I developed and drew, and there was a time there where the lawyer group, whoever it is, and between all centers were like doctors or lawyers. I had 25 lawsuits last year, or I got 15 patents.
Yeah.
But then took so much time. We got this one patent. I mean, it's nothing anybody in the world would, but some test facility would use. how to maximize. We did cryogenic work, tunnels. I've designed facilities where I just used vacuum pumps, and then vacuum pumps with what's the next step up, and the next one was diffusion pumps, I think it was. Oil, they had oil, and then we had the cryogenic work there. And we did base heating tests. We're still at the 18-foot diameter. They called it the base heater test. It was to simple. You could pull a vacuum down in that 18-foot, and then mount a model of the rear end of the shuttle of the launch vehicle, and fire them, and then they could make movies of the plumes and do all kinds of good stuff. I guess the last thing I got really interested in, we have to still use the first person water flow facility out there. They ran all kinds of tests about the time I left. A flow through the main engine, pumps to the main engines, and they were looking for dead spaces. You could put dye and you could see this, but with good scale stuff. And they found one of the engines somewhere where they just had a little whirlwind in there.
Little vortex.
Little vortex, right. And whoever it was that were designing the engine, they changed the contours in there to get rid of that.
Sure.
Every little bit helps.
Well, are you still working?
No, that's for my wife.
Pardon?
Except working for my wife.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, when did you stop working for the company then?
Well, they went kaput.
Oh, okay.
And what I enjoyed doing, I've always enjoyed outdoors. I've scuba dived, backpacked, and I was running 5 and 10K races about 5 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You were in good shape then.
Yeah, I tore up a knee though crawling. I was putting down a baseboard on the position on my house, and the lower level was a concrete slab, and I hadn't put a baseboard down. I was crawling on concrete without knee pads on, and I tore up my knee. So that ended the running and most of my walking like I used to do.
Well, it's been a very interesting conversation.
Well, I'm a little wordy. I won't apologize for it.
No, not at all.
That's that way.
That's
where the old folks, they weren't in TV or radios, and you like to visit the place where the old man can tell you some tales.
Yeah.
I've got about 300 pages of handwritten stuff, things I've done, 10 times I should have been dead, and all that kind of stuff. And I can hardly read it. My son-in-law and my daughter and granddaughter, they want me to get it in a little better shape, but I doubt I'll ever do it.
Well, even if it's in sort of rough shape, you ought to leave it to the archives here, and then people can use it.
I wish I'd give anything if I had, like when my grandfather and great-grandfather moved in West Tennessee, that they would have kept some kind of just cold winter day,
Yeah.
We fed the cattle, we did this, split wood, just a little. Because what you do, and if progress keeps going, it'll get lost in there.
Well, I guess we need to wrap this up.
Okay. You don't want to see this?
Oh, I'll see that in due course. I'd like to make a copy of that afterwards.
Yeah.
But
well, I got an assembly drawing here of it.
Okay, yeah. Well, we'll make copies.
I'd like to get those copies back.
Oh yeah, we can go down and make copies. You can carry the originals
and
off.
If I've got some other stuff, I wish I could find. When I got here, Oscar Hoover, of course, was my boss, and he knew every German out here, and worked with him for years. And they had what they call a boneyard. They had 3 old V2 rockets over there, and we'd go there and take off. We needed a little gear motor or something. We would scavenge, and I've got a couple of about that big around, about that tall, that I scavenged and we never used. what they call it, the little motor runs 12,000 RPM. You got planetary gear reducers, just to turn like this.
Yeah.
I've got two of them. I've got one of them tagged, don't throw this away when I'm gone. This came off a German V2 rocket, and there's probably not another one in the world.
Yep. Well, it's been fun talking with you today.
Well, I didn't know I was going to have to.
Thank you for coming.
I just always go over the drawings.
Well, now we've recorded your experiences for posterity, and the historians working
I don't believe they can stand
some
it.
years from now can listen to it and get
There was a character. Could he talk?
Well, it's interesting that that wind tunnel was built. I had never heard that it was built. It was built and then had to be.
They're still running now.
Pardon?
It's still.
No, I mean your hypervelocity one.
Well, that's what I knew. I have a good friend, and I go to church with him, Noby Stone.
Yeah, I know Noby.
You know Noby?
He used to work for me. Yeah.
Yeah, he's that right. Well, I was talking about one time, and he said, I said, when I worked on the hypersonic wind tunnels, I said, Marshall never had one. I said, they had one, I can show you the drawings on it. And if I could get over there into that, they had a dry air tank for the 7-inch tunnel, and it's just been left as a file of cabinets in it, stored. And I said, I gave them all my handwritten stress work, everything. I called a couple of guys, one of the engineers was interested in keeping it. They came from work one day, and I carried it home, but I knew when I emptied the desk, it was going in the trash. And Noble said, then he got out and looked in and said, well, you're right, they did have one, didn't they? I said, yeah, I'll show you drawings on it.
Well, that's very interesting. Well, thank you for coming in.
Well, appreciate you having me.
Appreciate
I think this is a great deal. These are things I'm trying to find on my grandfathers and great-grandfathers.
Well,
But and it's hard to find it, though.
Well, this all goes online. 100 years from now, your descendants can listen to your discussion today.
Have me on what is it?
Facebook?
Facebook or whatever.
Oh, yeah, I probably could do that. Well, thank you very much.